So thank you very much for joining me again on another session of Down the Line. And today this is going to be a really interesting interview because we're going to be talking with Reinhard Pees. He's the audio-visual person here at St. Andrew's United Church in Cumberland, Ontario. And we're going to be discussing how to set up PTZ cameras on OBS using NDI, PoE, and OBS, which we'll all explain to you later what all those things mean. As well as the final thing we're going to talk about is the Elgato Stream Deck, which is going to be a very important part of this, especially for your non-trained talent that's going to be running the system. So with that, let me just say thanks very much for being with us today. It's really great.
Thank you for having me.
And to start off with, could you just sort of tell what you do here and what's your role at St. Andrews?
My role right now is a technical lead. I've been involved with the community of faith here for over 20 years and done everything from choir to now IT.
Yeah, it's like the land of the blind. The one-eyed man is king, right?
Yeah.
And can you just give us an idea of what is the basic setup that you have here now? Because you've gone from what you had before, which was using webcams, and now what are you going to?
Yes. So after COVID, we went to a hybrid situation and tried to stream on through our YouTube channel and used 2 webcams, or first originally just 1 webcam, but it's designed to be 3 to 5 feet away, not 15 feet away, and so the quality was relatively poor. And consequently, we've tried, thanks to your help and some of your channel sessions that you provided on setting things up in the church. We've tried different things. We have a unique situation where we have a remote cart that we use. So what we're now progressing to, or raising funds for, is a pan, tilt, and zoom camera. But because we don't have the power set up the way that it is, we need to get power to them. And then we have a high-speed network here, thank goodness, to the local internet service providers. And so we're trying to get all of those things together, and that's culminating in what we're discussing today.
So what you're doing right now is you're using pan, tilt, and zoom cameras. And you have kind of got them automated through your open broadcaster system, the OBS.
Right.
And which is it's free, folks, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to get that set up on another session here. But it's really quite a good tool considering the price. Yes. And also you're using Ethernet to connect up these pan, tilt, and zoom cameras, and you're using a special protocol which is called Network Device Interface, or NDI.
Right.
And so you don't need HDMI cables, you don't need SDI cables, and you can get quite a run off those things.
And you don't need power.
And you don't need, that's right,
so
the power is running over the Ethernet, PoE, or power over Ethernet.
Yeah, so the content is coming from the cameras through the Ethernet cables, and the power is being sent to the cameras on that same cable. So you don't have one cable for the entire camera, and don't need the extra power outlets, which means panel issues and all the kind of things that older places have.
And you've been working on this for a little while now. You've had a couple of test runs, and it's now that it's working. How's it going? It's
going very, very well. Over the last month, we've tried different things and run into some hurdles that we were able to surpass or to get over, and so we're ready to rock and roll. So our fundraiser is going well.
So why PTZ instead of just a fixed camera?
Well, we had the experience, as I alluded earlier, with one particular camera was static on one position, let's say announcements, and then we said that, well, rather than moving it manually around to the pulpit, we would maybe get a second camera. So we have a second camera, get another webcam, very inexpensive, but again, it's a static view, and we can't do much with it. And so this PTZ or PTZ, whatever you want to call it, camera allows you to take multiple images from the same location, but pan to different locations, and we'll get into how that's controlled later.
Well, that's great. In fact, I wanted to bring up now how OBS plays its part in all of this. And I think we also forgot to mention one other piece of software that we need, and that's the Network Device Interface, or NDI, so that you can now connect your cameras to OBS. So how does that happen?
Well, the Open Broadcasting System, the free one, which is, thank goodness, thank God, the Open Broadcasting System has a lot of different opportunities for around the world.
Right.
And one of the things that it does is the people that write programs for it have written a program to control these PTZ, or pan, tilt, and zoom cameras. Rather than using a remote control that comes with the camera, it's a manual thing, and the first time I used it, thanks to you, I had one and I manually went over my shoulder to go to a different place. And so the Open Broadcasting System and the PTZ plugin allows you to control that. However, because we're using the network device interface, OBS also has to have a network or an NDI plugin so that it can understand the instructions that are coming from the camera and deal with those through the network rather than the manual stuff.
Right. So can you just show us how that works?
I can. So right now what we have is the camera is set up with NDI connection to a network hub. That network hub is connected to the computer that I'm using OBS in, as well as being connected to the internet for streaming if we were to do that later. So what we do is I'll just set up in OBS you have a scene that is created. It's kind of a workflow situation where you have, right now I have scene 0 set up here, and so a scene has multiple actors or contents or sources, as they're called in this interface, and these sources can be audio, visual, actions, and other actors that play a role in that scene. And throughout the church service, we go from one scene to another, transitioning from one to another, and we'll get into how we do that later. So what happens right now is that if I were to create a new scene, scene number 2, for example, you can see that the scene is there, but there are no sources in the scene. So we need a source of video. So we're going to take this plugin, the NDI source. We have one that's existing. It's the only camera we have online right now. And we'll choose that. And so we now have a full screen view of what the camera is, or what the camera does. Now, if we wanted to control a preset that I have for the camera, then what I would do is I would include, as an actor or someone in the scene, a PTZ action. And we have an action, let's create a new one, action 2. And action 2 will be, let's say, the lectern. So if we have the lectern, then we can test it just to make sure whether that works or not. And that'll move directly to the lectern. So once we've got that done, if we went back to scene 0, it would go back to our situation. And scene 0, as you can see right now, has an action of the widest screen that you can get. But using the controls, I can actually zoom the camera in any way that I wish and move it around manually without a control. So that's what I've been using to record originally.
Yeah, don't get too close or they'll see my messy table here.
No, yeah.
Well, that's really powerful. And I also notice in this particular shot, you actually have a picture-in-picture as well.
Yes.
And that's another thing you can do with OBS, is bring in 2 sources to create a picture-in-picture situation. So what is that second one used for?
So that second one is used for simultaneously streaming to the online viewer the same slide deck that is being presented in the church through a projector.
Yeah.
And so the way that works is if you're going to church calendar, or welcoming our God sightings, or a call to worship, or hymns, etc., the online viewer is seeing exactly the same thing as the in worship or in sanctuary person And the controller of later on we'll talk about the Stream Deck, when they click the forward button, it's going to click the button for the online audience at the same time as it does for the people that are in the sanctuary.
Oh, that's amazing. And it wasn't that difficult to set up, although one thing we didn't mention here, which I'll talk about when I talk about setting up OBS, is that in OBS you have these things called shortcuts. Mm-hmm. And so what you've done is you've preset using the controller here for the PTZ. You've done a preset, and then you save that preset to one of these shortcuts, and then that's what you're using to put into the source in that scene. Is that right?
Correct. So the PTZ control plugin, if you will, has the ability to preset as many as you want. You can have 16, 20, 100, however many you want per camera. And so then what the PTZ action is recalling that particular preset that you've created on that camera. Right. If we had two cameras, you could have a different preset on the second camera and work it that way. So it can get as complicated as you like, or it can be relatively simple for anyone to use.
Right, and again, just not to belabor the point, but there's no HDMI cable here.
Nope.
It's all done through the Ethernet.
All done through the ether.
And as we also were talking before we started, was you can actually even do it wirelessly if you had the right kind of device that could run wirelessly.
Yes, I found that out by accident. I forgot to plug the Ethernet cable into my laptop, and because it was on the same network as the camera was, it found that network, and I was able to control the camera wirelessly by accident.
And so just to recap here, OBS is essentially the studio
collection
for setting up everything. The scenes, as you were saying, these are if you think about a theater performance, a live theater performance, and you have several scenes. One of them could be in a living room, and so your actors and the stage prop people, the engineers that are doing the lighting, the sound, and so on. Those are the sources or characters that are in that scene.
Correct.
So if you think about it in the sense of a live theater, I think that will probably make a little sense. I was always wondering how they wanted to describe what a scene was. But, I got it, I think, by using that. So now that we've got this part set up, how now do we deal with the plugins, and how does that enhance the control that you have?
Well, the plugin, first of all, the NDI plugin is really invisible, other than you can see an NDI source in right. your source list. But other than that, it's kind of in the background. It's just the engine that runs the network capability or the connectivity between OBS and the components that are also on that same network. The PTZ controls are a plugin where, as you saw earlier, I can move the camera back and forth and do all kinds of things, call presets, and I can do an autofocus, I can do macro, I can do all kinds of things. Limitations are only based on what the camera has to offer.
And your understanding.
And my understanding of how to use it, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, because that is a point I think that is really important to know, is that this software, this studio thing, can operate no matter what your skill set is. If you're willing to, you can do it in a very basic fashion, or you can add enhancements to it, and it really comes from the amount of time you get to use it. I call it the learning curve. But you can get up and running almost immediately once you get it loaded.
Very, very quickly. As simple, how we started was very, very simply by removing the two webcams and replacing those two webcams with the most economical PTZ camera we could find, and then all of a sudden you have the entire sanctuary as angles that you can use as a camera for very limited funds.
So now let's get on to the really interesting little piece called the Elgato Stream Deck. Maybe you could hold up to show the folks. It's right there.
It's right there.
There you go.
All right, there we go.
So this is a cute piece of equipment.
So this Stream Deck, and I can show you, I can bring it up on the screen.
Yes, there we go.
So this Stream Deck is actually one of the things that I found really helpful, because we have 3 people, including myself, that run services on a schedule, and not everyone has the same capabilities technologically as the other. And so we're trying to find a way to make things as simple as possible and follow the flow of the church service from one scene to another. And so what this Elgato Stream Deck does is allow us to program each scene, or the shortcut to each scene, onto a button.
Right.
So when I want the lectern and the slides, I push the lectern and slides button, and I don't have to know anything about OBS, I don't have to know anything about PTZ, I don't have to do anything other than push the button and go, that's what's going to be shown online to the people. Another one is just slides only, for those when you want a full screen during a hymn. Pulpit and slides, or pulpit only, and those are different scenes that we've created as a minimum. I have a different offering, for example, and during the offering I present the online viewers with a different screen than they're viewing here, because I want the online folks to realize how they could participate in the offering, as opposed to putting money in a plate. They could do it electronically, they can do it donate at, whatever. So.
Yeah, and I also noticed that the sort of the bottom row there, you actually have, those are the controls for the slides, right?
Right, so the page up and page down, I haven't renamed them, but those are the forward and backward slides. And there's actually a second page as well that I've created. And these Stream Decks have multiple pages that you can create for different functions.
You can have 99 pages.
You can have 99 pages if you want. But one of the things I'm thinking of next is that how do we have one page for PTZ controller? So you can actually move to that page and control the cameras right from here. I'm not sure how effective that would be, but I've got things like, if we have technical difficulties.
Oh yes, okay, yeah.
To show the online folks that we're having problems, please stand by, so they will see a technical difficulties picture. Be right back. We've got a be right back situation where if we're streaming something in the service that we don't have the right to restream copyright-wise, we'll do this be right back. We'll have some licensed music that we play in the background so that their participation is limited at this point, but when we go back, then we'll be going back to the service as we move forward.
So with the Elgato Stream Deck, there is a link that you can have with the Stream Deck software where you can pick up those things from OBS and store them in the little box. And that way a person doesn't have to know what a scene is or what scene to push or anything like that. It's right there on the button.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you can mute or hide or do all kinds of instructions, if you will, that are relative in OBS. They have an OBS component or interaction, and you can program the button to do it. So it's very simple. If I were to go to another page, or no, go to the first page, click on a button and say I want a scene to be programmed here, and click on the scene that you want. It gives you an options of scene 0 as an example, and boom, there it is. You can create a little picture. You can create and one of the things I did is I created a check mark, as you may have seen on page 2. When a button is active, there's a check mark there, so that it tells the operator that that's the one that's live. Otherwise, it looks just like the other buttons, so you never know which one is actually showing. And so to keep up with the program, if you will, there's a check mark saying this is the live one that you're showing right now. So there's all kinds of things.
That's great. And that's going to be a subject of another little segment we'll do is how to integrate a Stream Deck into this OBS. I will caution you though that it's not cheap, and unfortunately, and there are some knockoffs that are available. There's also some software controls that you can get that will run the software on an iPad or on your smartphone. Mm-hmm. So You could probably get away with not having something like this, but I'll give you some other hints later on about what you could use instead. But this is really fascinating because now you've got, you know, the person that comes in to run it, all they have to know is make sure everything's on, that's lit up, and to just push the right button at the right time.
At the right time, and we've written up an instruction booklet for anyone coming in saying this, you know, plug this in here, plug this in there. We've got color codes for the different plugs, just because it's it can be very daunting to come in and try to get this set up cold.
Well, this is really great. It's going to be a really good introduction to what I'm going to be talking about in terms of the open broadcasting system, and also about the Stream Deck or some version of that. And I think this would really make, I know there are places that they have a hard time finding people. And in the situation we have at our church, you need at least 2 people to be running the system. But these are people who know what they're doing. But it would be less scary if we had something like this set up there, which hopefully we will in the future. But anyway, thank you very much for this. I really like that you've shared all of your insights and how you're doing things in a way that, well, actually it doesn't cost all that much. I guess the biggest expense you've got is in your cameras right now.
Cameras and a laptop, because you need the right laptop to run all this stuff too.
Yeah, so what we've talked about today is how we can set up a system using a lot of it basically free software. We've looked at how we can use this open broadcasting system to be able to manage cameras, how we can run cameras with only one connection, which includes having the power as well as having the video and audio coming from it, if you're going to do audio from it. And also how we can use a really interesting device that would make it so simple for those people who are going to come in to do the work with you. So thanks a lot for walking through this with us.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
And if you've enjoyed this interview and you'd like to find out more information about it, just click on the area below this screen. If you liked it, please give us a like. We would really appreciate that. And come on and join our channel and pick up on some more stuff that's going on. And stay tuned, because we'll be having some more information on all of this that we've just talked about. And so thanks for joining me, and see you soon.